I met Penny for the first time last few weeks ago at an open mic afternoon here at the Poetry Cafe, and I was very impressed by what I heard. She's part of the Southwark Stanza Group. Stanza groups are organised through the Poetry Society all over the country, and she grew up in the West Country and lived in Edinburgh for 10 years before moving to London in 2011, so we're fortunate to have her here tonight. Her work has been published in the Alden Tree and V, New Writing from Edinburgh, but now you're able to hear Penny for yourself, because here she is. Give her a big DODO welcome to Penny, her first time at DODO Meditates.
Sort of feel under pressure now to have poems with donkey noises about fish, but I haven't got any of those. The first poem I want to read tonight is called Birdsong. It's nothing to do with the novel that has the same name. I know that we think of birds kind of singing at dawn, but I once got woken up by a blackbird that was singing at about 3 o'clock in the morning, so literally in the middle of the night. But it did lead to this poem, so although I couldn't sleep because of it, something good hopefully came out of it. Birdsong. Tonight is a hammock strung between coffee and conversations, a knotted mesh that strains beneath the weight of sleeplessness. The sharpened blade of a blackbird's song planes the darkness. Corkscrews of dawn soften the asphalt sky. Rings around fingers, small enough to prise the concrete open and make a nest of rough-skinned hope, an overflow of fluted questions. A sheet of ruckled dawn conceals the polished grain of early morning. Birdsong quavers within a hedgerow of unbudded thoughts. When I was thinking about these poems on my way home from work, I thought, it would have been quite good to have a kind of map of Edinburgh and the surrounding areas, because so many of them are sort of based on location somewhere in or around Edinburgh. And the next one is called George Square Gardens, and it's based in the sort of centre of the university buildings in Edinburgh, where the university library is. And when I was thinking about this, I was sort of thinking about the idea that's in that film called An Education, where one of the characters turns around to her headmistress and she says, you need to think about what you're educating us for. And I think it's easy to be at university, sitting in library, doing a lot of work, but actually, what is it all for, and what's the point, really, of us being here, I guess. And so this poem is a little bit about that. George Square Gardens. Geometry is inscribed within the bones of this place. It is what enables it to survive. The assumption that everything can be positioned like hunched rows of terraced buildings, wedged shoulder to shoulder into obedience. Squatting on the edge of this construct, we gaze into the garden that we've created out of our need for order, and we long to inhabit it. From this space comes the calligraphy of winter birdsong, scratching a stubborn belief in spring upon the foolscap pages of an empty day. A crow lifts the corner of a plastic bag in speculative wonder, and the swollen sun drops gold onto green, hidden in lichen-covered branches that we simply knew as brown, an emerald grace note in the palm of work-roughened hands. And the next poem is actually also set in George Square Gardens. And it all began when I was looking after my goddaughter, who was about 7 or 8 at the time, and trying to teach her how to make a daisy chain, which is actually a little bit more difficult than you might think. She couldn't quite get the hang of sort of slitting the stalk and then getting the other bit of the daisy to go through, and she had a sort of method of tying them in knots which didn't really work. So we never quite got the hang of making daisy chains, but I did write this poem, which was sort of thinking about how sometimes conversation and words and meaning can be a bit like trying to make that daisy chain as well. Daisy chains. Making sentences is not as easy as it seems. Crouching at a distance, I watch you as you wind word around word, absorbed in the art of pulling knots tight without breaking them. These delicate hoops are poised on the edge of rebellion, resistant to the complicated knack of forming circles. An alternative is to slit the stalk with your thumbnail, then coax through another stem, like threading a needle, but you find this difficult. We loop the finished chain around your neck, the flowers already beginning to wilt into frail, papery seed heads of themselves. I think I'll probably do maybe one or two more. I keep glancing at my watch, but I forgot to look at it when I stood up, so I'm not completely sure.
You're fine.
How long I've had. I'm fine, apparently.
2 or 3 more is perfect.
Okay. This poem is called Star of Wonder. And I guess I was just kind of thinking last night, hands are so amazing. It's about hands. And you look at them and you think, my goodness, this is an amazing feat of engineering, and also the way that we use them to communicate and to make things. When you sit down and think about it, it's incredible what we can convey through a hand. So this poem is all about that, and I don't think I've actually ever read it in public before, so it's its first reading. Star of Wonder. In the concrete by the front door, a newly laid handprint, like the image of a star, caught forever at 1 year old. Within months you have outgrown it, walking further and faster, chubby arms outstretched towards the future, where your hands are taken and moulded into usefulness, the point of a question, the spread out palm of wanting, the scrunched up knot of fear. They become signs, tools, containers, your system for sampling the world. In your teenage years, the star itself becomes the object, trimmed and varnished and wiped clean to begin again, henna tattooed and adorned with cheap rings that change every week. On the pad of your palm, you doodle secrets. They fade quietly with time, until we end up here, with armfuls of boxes and a tiny rented room and a sky that is bright with hope. Eventually, I leave you standing on the pavement and pull away. In the rear view mirror hangs the image of a star, a vulnerable squiggle of life, poised at its beginning. Trying to think about what to read. I think I'll finish with a few very short ones, which this one was really just written for fun. And before we got started, we were talking about the Horizon programme about cats, which was on last night, which was very informative for anyone who's a cat owner, which I am. And this poem is called Raining Cats and Dogs, and is about the difference really between a dog and a cat and their concept of how they fit in to sort of humanity. So, Raining Cats and Dogs. Dog rain is a rattle against laziness, a shaking out of sense, a giving in to mud and puddles and the joy of getting wet. Cat rain nuzzles you out of sleep, a four-legged har on tiptoe, sabotaging picnics and lawnmowers and the promise of a sunny day.
Yeah, 1 or 2 more.
It's for my friend Maggie, and when I was doing a master's degree in poetry at Edinburgh, and we didn't actually have our own library, so I used to invade the classics library where she was a classics student trying to teach herself Latin. And she was, one of her sort of tasks to do this was to translate Latin into English. But of course sometimes when you're learning a language, what you get as your translation isn't actually what it really means. So this poem is called Translations of the Original Text. You discover the truth through a misunderstanding, a too literal interpretation of the ancient Jew oppressi. Afterwards you laughed at your mistake, scored through, overwhelmed by the day, with a neat black line, printed, long oppressed, into the empty space above your discarded words. Thank you.
Great opening set there from Penny. More applause, please. In a moment, Mr. P.R. Murray is going to take the stage. Just have to make a couple of technical adjustments. You want to sit down first? Here, let's see if I've got you on camera. Okay, while Pete's just finding his page there, I'll just say a few words about him. Pete is, as you can see, part of the organisation of DODO Modern Poets. He's also a very fine painter and sculptor as well as a poet. At the moment, he's got some work in the show, Brent Artist Show at Electric House in Willesden Lane till the 25th of June. So if you can catch that, it's free as well, and obviously a variety of artists there. Pete's got some sculpture and painting there. There's a new book on sale here tonight. He's obviously performed with DODO Modern Poets many times over the years. Pete and I have known each other for something like 30 years, so I'd like to welcome to the stage Mr. P.R. Murray.
Thank you. Most of my poems in the first half are going to be about animals of one sort or another. And my first poem is about an animal, which is what they call a cryptid.